The grand halls of the Zelvarian Empire shimmered with golden light. Towering spires of crystal and metal stretched high into the sky, reflecting the twin suns that bathed the capital city, Velmora, in a warm glow. It was a city of wonders, home to one of the most advanced alien civilizations in the galaxy. And today, for the first time in history, a human walked among them. Captain Ethan Cole stood tall in his official diplomatic uniform, the emblem of the Terran Diplomatic Corps shining on his chest. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his sharp green eyes scanned the vast chamber ahead. He had trained for this moment for years. First contact with one of the most powerful alien empires in the known universe. He had studied their history, their culture, their language. He was ready. Or so he thought. A fanfare of soft, melodic chimes echoed across the hall as the massive golden doors ahead of him slid open. A group of Zelvarian officials entered first, their tall, slender forms moving with graceful precision. Their purple-hued skin shimmered slightly under the light, and their large silver eyes studied him with curiosity. Then, at the center of the delegation, she appeared. Princess Salvana. She was stunning, even by human standards. Her long silver hair flowed like silk, her regal robes woven with intricate patterns of gold and violet. A crown-like headpiece rested on her forehead, marking her status as heir to the throne. But as her eyes met Ethan's, something strange happened. She froze. For a moment, the entire room fell silent. The officials beside her glanced at one another in confusion. Salvana's elegant posture stiffened. Her lips parted slightly as if she had forgotten how to speak. Ethan, ever the professional, took a step forward and offered a respectful bow. "Your Highness," he said in perfect Zelvarian dialect, "it is an honor to stand before you. On behalf of humanity, I bring greetings of peace and friendship." She didn't respond. Her silver eyes flickered with something unreadable. Her fingers trembled slightly before she clenched them into fists. She took a slow breath, her chest rising and falling in an uneven rhythm. Ethan hesitated. Had he made a mistake? Was there a cultural rule he had broken? A Zelvarian official, sensing the awkward silence, quickly stepped forward. "Ahem. The princess welcomes you, Ambassador Cole. The Empire is pleased by your arrival." Salvana's lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Instead, she swallowed hard and looked away, her violet cheeks darkening with a subtle flush. What was going on? Ethan remained composed, though his mind raced with questions. Was she feeling unwell? Did humans somehow offend Zelvarians on a biological level, or was something else at play? As the introductions continued, Salvana's behavior grew even stranger. She avoided direct eye contact, her breathing remained uneven, and she kept shifting uncomfortably in her ornate throne. She looked unsettled. Then she did something unexpected. She abruptly stood up. "This meeting is adjourned for now," she announced quickly. "We will continue tomorrow." The officials exchanged puzzled glances, but none dared question her. Ethan, however, was stunned. Had he done something to offend her? Before he could ask, she turned sharply and walked away, almost too quickly for someone of royal grace. Ethan sighed. So much for a perfect first impression. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his guest quarters, staring out of the window at the glowing skyline of Velmora. The first meeting had been unusual. He had expected formal talks, negotiations, perhaps even a little tension. But this, he replayed the scene in his head. Every little movement, every hesitation. The way she had reacted the moment she saw him. What was it about him that had caused such a reaction? A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. His communicator flickered to life, and a voice spoke through the device. "Ambassador Cole, you have an urgent visitor." Frowning, Ethan stood up and opened the door. To his shock, it was Princess Salvana. She was standing there, her hands clasped tightly, her expression both determined and nervous. Ethan blinked. "Your Highness, "I need to speak with you," she said quickly. Her voice was firm, but there was a slight tremor to it. "Of course." He stepped aside. "Please come in." She hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. The door hissed shut behind her, and then she exhaled deeply, as if she had been holding her breath this entire time. "This is a problem," she muttered under her breath. Ethan folded his arms. "What exactly is the problem, Your Highness?" She turned to face him, her silver eyes locking onto his. Then, after a long pause, she finally said it. "You." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Me?" She nodded slowly. "You don't understand. Your presence is affecting me." Ethan's mind reeled. Affecting her? What did that even mean? Before he could ask, she took a step closer. This has never happened before," she admitted. "But the moment I saw you, something in me changed." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary diplomatic mission anymore. Something far more complicated was unfolding, and it all started with him. Ethan Cole had been in many strange situations during his time as a diplomat, but this was something entirely new. Princess Salvanna stood in the middle of his guest quarters, her silver eyes locked onto him, her posture stiff, her breathing uneven. The air between them felt heavy, almost like some unseen force was pressing down on the room. Ethan kept his voice calm. "Your Highness, you said my presence is affecting you. Could you explain?" She hesitated, her fingers clenching and unclenching as if struggling to find the right words. Finally, she sighed and shook her head. "I don't fully understand it myself," she admitted. "But ever since I saw you, something inside me changed. It's as if my body is reacting to you in ways I cannot control." Ethan frowned. "Reacting? In what way?" Zelvanna's violet cheeks darkened in what he assumed was the Zelvarian version of a blush. She glanced away, clearly uncomfortable. "It is difficult to describe," she said, her voice quieter now. "My heartbeat rises. My focus weakens. I feel unsettled." Ethan's mind raced. He had studied Zelvarian biology before coming here, but nothing in the research mentioned humans having any special effect on them. Could this be something unknown? Some kind of biological reaction they hadn't discovered before? "I assure you, Your Highness," Ethan said carefully, "I have no intention of causing you discomfort. If there is something I can do to—" "No," she interrupted. "It is not your fault. You are merely being human." That statement made no sense to Ethan. Being human. Zalvanna took a slow breath before facing him again. "There is a theory," she said. "Among our scholars, it is said that different species can sometimes have unexpected biological effects on one another, but never has it been this strong." Ethan crossed his arms. "So you think humans give off something that affects your species?" "Not all humans," she corrected. "Just you." Ethan stiffened. That was not what he expected to hear. "Me." Zalvanna nodded. "The moment I saw you, I felt it. Something in your presence is overwhelming to me." Ethan studied her carefully. She wasn't lying. Her posture, her voice, everything about her screamed genuine confusion and concern. "I need to know," she said suddenly, stepping closer. "Is this normal for humans? Do others feel the same around you?" Ethan nearly laughed at that. "No," he said honestly. "I've never had this effect on anyone before." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why is it happening to me?" Ethan had no answer, but he had a growing suspicion that whatever this was, it wasn't just a simple reaction. Something deeper was at play. A council divided. The next morning, Ethan was summoned to the Zelvarian High Council, a gathering of the Empire's most powerful figures. The chamber was vast, with tall golden pillars and a floating circular table where the council members sat in elegant robes. Zalvanna was there too, sitting beside her father, Emperor Valkoris, a towering figure with piercing silver eyes. As soon as Ethan stepped forward, he could feel the tension in the room. The council members whispered among themselves, their gazes shifting between him and Salvanha. Finally, an elder counselor spoke. "Human ambassador, we have been informed that your presence has caused an unusual reaction in our princess." Ethan nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "Yes, your excellency, but I do not know why." Another counselor, a sharp-eyed woman, leaned forward. "This is concerning. If humans possess an unknown effect on our biology, then your species may be dangerous." Ethan knew he had to tread carefully. With all due respect, this reaction seems to be unique to Princess Salvanha. Other Zelvarians have not displayed any signs of distress in my presence. The room fell silent. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Then Emperor Valkorus spoke. His voice was deep, commanding, and unreadable. "Is this true, daughter?" Salvanha hesitated before nodding. "Yes, father. It is. Only him." A murmur rippled through the council. Some looked skeptical, others concerned. "Then the problem is not with humanity," Valkorus said. "It is with you." Salvanha flinched slightly. Ethan saw something in her expression, a flicker of frustration, perhaps even hurt. "My emperor," one of the counselors spoke up. "If this is a unique case, then perhaps the matter is personal rather than political." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Personal? What were they implying?" Valkorus sighed and turned to Salvanha. "Daughter, do you wish for the human to leave?" Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Was this it? Would his mission end before it even began? Salvanha's fingers twitched, her jaw clenched. But then, after a long pause, she finally spoke. "No." The council members looked surprised. Salvanha took a deep breath and straightened her posture. "I do not fully understand what is happening to me, but sending him away will not answer our questions." Valkorus studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. The human may stay, but this matter will be monitored closely." Ethan exhaled slowly. That was close. A mystery unfolds. Later that evening, Ethan found himself walking through the palace gardens, his mind racing. This entire situation was beyond anything he had expected. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You should not have stayed." Ethan turned to see Salvanha standing a few feet away. Her silver eyes held a mix of frustration and curiosity. "You're the one who asked me to," Ethan reminded her. She sighed. "Yes, but I do not know if it was the right choice." Ethan tilted his head. "Are you afraid of me?" Her eyes widened slightly. "No," she said quickly. "I do not fear you, human. I fear what this means." Ethan took a step closer, meeting her gaze. "Then let's find out together." For the first time, she didn't look away. Instead, she nodded. "Agreed." As they stood there under the twin moons of Velmora, one thing became clear. This was just the beginning. Ethan Cole had expected diplomatic challenges when he was assigned as humanity's first ambassador to the Zelvarian Empire, but he had never imagined that the biggest challenge would be himself, or rather, his effect on Princess Salvanha. She was frustrated. That much was clear. The more time they spent in the same room, the more restless she became. Her fingers would twitch, her breathing would hitch, and sometimes she'd go completely silent, staring at him like he was an unsolvable puzzle. And yet she didn't ask him to leave. In fact, she kept seeking him out. A tense study. "This is absurd." Salvanha's voice was sharp as she paced the private research chamber inside the palace. "The scientists say there is no logical reason for this." Ethan sat across from her, calm but curious. "No biological explanation." She turned, arms crossed. "None. Your scent, your voice, even the energy you emit, everything falls within acceptable parameters for interspecies contact." Ethan smirked slightly. "I guess that means I'm not toxic." She glared at him. "This is not amusing." "Maybe not to you," he said, leaning back. "But from my perspective, This is the first time I've ever been accused of breaking science just by standing in a room. She exhaled sharply, clearly trying to control her emotions. Then, after a moment, she spoke softer. "There must be an answer," she murmured. "I refuse to believe this is fate or destiny, or whatever nonsense my people might whisper." Ethan frowned. "Whisper?" Zalvanna hesitated before sitting down. "There are already rumors," she admitted. "Some believe this is a sign that humans and Zelvarians are meant to form a deeper bond. Others think it's a curse, that your kind should never have come here." Ethan studied her carefully. "And what do you think?" She held his gaze. For a brief second, the sharp-edged princess softened, as if she wasn't sure what to believe. Then the doors slammed open. An assassination attempt. A blur of motion. Dark figures dressed in black armor stormed into the chamber, weapons raised. Ethan's instincts kicked in immediately. He grabbed Zalvanna and pulled her behind the nearest cover, a marble desk, as energy blasts shattered the air. "Traitors!" Zalvanna hissed, her voice full of fury. Ethan peeked over the desk, assessing the attackers. There were 6 of them, moving with military precision. Their weapons weren't meant to stun, they were here to kill. "Stay down," he told her. Zalvanna scoffed. "I am not a fragile creature, human." She reached for a hidden blade strapped to her thigh, her movements practiced. Ethan grinned. "Good. Then let's even the odds." As the assassins advanced, Ethan grabbed a fallen energy pistol from the floor. With precise aim, he fired once, twice, hitting one attacker in the leg and another in the shoulder. They collapsed, weapons clattering. Zalvanna was already on the move, slicing through the air with her blade. She dodged an incoming strike, twisting with incredible agility, before slashing across an attacker's chest. The assassin fell, groaning. Another enemy lunged at her, but Ethan stepped in, slamming his fist into the attacker's helmeted face. The impact sent them stumbling, and Zalvanna finished them off with a sharp kick. The last assassin hesitated, realizing the fight was lost. Then, without warning, they reached for their belt. A self-destruct trigger. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing a metal tray from the desk and hurling it at the assassin's hand. It struck with a loud crack, knocking the device away before it could be activated. Zalvanna wasted no time. She lunged forward and delivered a final blow, knocking the last enemy unconscious. The room fell silent except for their heavy breathing. Ethan glanced at her. "You okay?" She straightened, chin high, eyes fierce. "I should be asking you that, human." He smirked. "Not my first fight." Her gaze lingered on him for a second longer than necessary before she turned away. "We need answers. A conspiracy unfolds." Moments later, guards stormed in, responding to the commotion. The captured assassins were dragged away, but even under interrogation, they refused to speak. That meant one thing. They were loyal to someone powerful. Zalvanna clenched her fists. "Someone wants me dead." Ethan folded his arms. "And they don't want me here either." "Obviously," she said, then hesitated. "But I do not think your presence is what started this. There has always been unrest among certain factions. Your arrival may have simply accelerated their plans." Ethan frowned. "You think they're using this reaction you have to me as an excuse?" She nodded. "Some believe I am becoming too close to you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Are you?" Zalvanna's expression tightened, as if she was caught off guard. Then she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You are insufferable." He chuckled. "I've been called worse." Her smile was brief, but it was there. A dangerous alliance. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. They had to work together. "We need to find out who is behind this," Zalvanna said, her tone determined. "And we must do it quickly." Ethan nodded. "Agreed. But that means you're stuck with me, princess." She sighed, shaking her head. "Unfortunate." He smirked. "You'll survive." As they stood side by side, Preparing for the challenges ahead, Ethan realized something. This mission was no longer just about diplomacy. It was about survival. And more than that, it was about something he couldn't quite name yet. But he had the feeling Sylvana felt it too. Ethan stood beside Princess Sylvana as the last of the unconscious assassins was dragged out of the chamber. The air still smelled of burned metal and energy blasts. The palace guards had secured the area, but their faces were tight with concern. An assassination attempt inside the royal palace. It meant one thing. The enemy was already within the walls. Sylvana clenched her fists. This was not a random attack. Ethan nodded. Someone powerful gave them access. She turned to one of the guards. Double the security around the palace. No one enters or leaves without my approval. The guard bowed. At once, Your Highness. As the guards moved out, Sylvana exhaled slowly, rubbing her temple. Ethan noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. She was trying to stay calm, but he could see the anger behind her silver eyes. You okay? He asked. She scoffed. A group of cowards tried to kill me in my own home. No, I am not okay. Ethan smirked slightly. I meant, are you hurt? She paused, looking at him as if surprised by the question. Then she sighed, shaking her head. No, I am unharmed. Thanks to you. Ethan shrugged. I wasn't about to let you get stabbed on my first diplomatic mission. She gave him a long look. You are different from the diplomats I've met before. Ethan chuckled. I get that a lot. A hidden threat. Later that evening, Sylvana and Ethan met with Emperor Valcoris in the royal council chamber. The emperor sat on his throne, his piercing silver eyes studying the report in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was like thunder. This attack was an insult to the throne. Sylvana bowed slightly. It was father, but it was also a message. Valcoris narrowed his gaze. You believe this was political? Ethan stepped forward. The assassins refused to talk. That means they fear someone more than they fear death. Valcoris's expression darkened. Then we must find out who that someone is. A high-ranking official, Lord Kellner, cleared his throat. With all due respect, my emperor, the timing of this attack is suspicious. His sharp gaze moved to Ethan. Ethan sighed internally. Here we go. The human arrives, Kellner continued, and suddenly our princess is affected by some strange force, and then an assassination attempt happens within days. Ethan crossed his arms. You think I planned this? Kellner didn't answer, but the implication was clear. Sylvana stepped forward, her voice firm. Ethan saved my life. Without him, I would not be standing here. The room fell silent. Even Valcoris raised an eyebrow at his daughter's defensive tone. Kellner frowned but bowed slightly. Of course, Your Highness. I only wish to ensure your safety. Sylvana's eyes remained cold. Then focus on finding the true enemy. Valcoris finally spoke again. Kellner, increase surveillance on the noble houses. I want to know if anyone has been meeting with unusual allies. Kellner bowed and left the chamber. Ethan leaned toward Sylvana and whispered, I don't think he likes me. She smirked slightly. Most of the nobles do not like outsiders, but you are not here to be liked. Ethan grinned. Good, because I was starting to think I'd have to start bringing gifts and flowers to council meetings. Sylvana rolled her eyes, but Ethan noticed the smallest hint of amusement on her face. An unwanted proposal. Later that night, Ethan was in his guest quarters when a message arrived, a formal invitation from Sylvana. He raised an eyebrow. Official invitations usually meant something serious. When he arrived at her private chamber, she was seated by the grand window, looking out at the city lights. The soft glow of Zelveria's twin moons reflected in her silver eyes. You called, he asked. She turned, her expression unreadable. I received an offer today. Ethan frowned. What kind of offer? Her jaw clenched. A marriage proposal. Ethan blinked. Oh, she sighed. Lord Malthar of House Virex has offered an alliance through marriage. He claims it would strengthen the Empire against outside threats. Ethan sat down across from her. And what do you think? She scoffed. I think he is a vulture, circling at the first sign of weakness. Ethan leaned back. So why tell me? Zalvanna hesitated, then met his gaze. Because if I refuse him, I will gain an enemy. But if I accept, I may lose control of my own future. Ethan studied her carefully. And you're not the type to let someone else control you. She gave a bitter smile. No, I am not. Ethan thought for a moment. Then we need a way to make him back off without making him an enemy. Zalvanna raised an eyebrow. And how do you propose we do that? Ethan smirked. Simple. We make it look like you're already taken. She stared at him, eyes widening slightly. Are you suggesting? He held up a hand. Not literally. But if Malthar believes you're, let's say, forming an alliance with someone else, he might reconsider. Zalvanna tilted her head. And who would I be forming an alliance with? Ethan grinned. Who else? Me. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. This is ridiculous. Is it? Ethan said. He's using politics as a weapon. We fight back with the same. She tapped her fingers against the table, considering. This could work. But it is dangerous. Ethan shrugged. So was surviving an assassination attempt. Zalvanna sighed. I hate that you make sense. Ethan smirked. Get used to it. As she stared at him, something unreadable passed through her eyes. Was it annoyance? Curiosity? Something else? She shook her head and stood. Fine. But if this backfires, human, I will hold you responsible. Ethan chuckled. Wouldn't have it any other way. As they stood under the glow of the twin moons, Ethan had a feeling that things were about to get even more complicated. The next morning, Ethan and Zalvanna walked side by side through the grand halls of the palace, their footsteps echoing against the polished marble floor. Outside, Zelveria's twin suns bathed the city in a golden light, but inside, the air was thick with tension. Today, the noble houses would gather for a formal assembly, a perfect opportunity to put their plan into motion. Ethan adjusted the high-collared ceremonial jacket the royal tailors had insisted he wear. So let me get this straight, he said, glancing at Zalvanna. I'm supposed to stand by your side, act like we have a special connection, and make Lord Malthar back off. Zalvanna kept her gaze forward. Precisely. Ethan smirked. And if he doesn't? She exhaled slowly. Then we may have to consider other methods. Ethan chuckled. Good to know you have backup plans. She stopped and turned to him. This is not a game, Ethan. If Malthar believes I am vulnerable, he will try to take advantage of the situation. That cannot happen. Ethan nodded, his expression turning serious. Understood. She studied him for a moment, then nodded back. Let's go. The noble gathering. The royal assembly hall was filled with Zelveria's most powerful figures, high-ranking nobles, military leaders, and scholars. Lord Malthar stood near the center, dressed in deep crimson robes, his dark blue skin marked with golden tattoos of nobility. When Zalvanna entered, the room fell silent. She walked with grace and authority, her head high, her expression unreadable. Ethan followed closely, his posture relaxed but watchful. Malthar smirked as they approached. Princess Zalvanna, how fortunate we are to be in your presence. Zalvanna offered a polite nod. Lord Malthar. His golden eyes flicked to Ethan. And the human. Quite the interesting companion you've chosen. Ethan smiled slightly. I do my best. Malthar's smirk widened. I must admit, it surprises me to see you two so close. Zalvanna tilted her head. Does it? Malthar chuckled. Rumors travel fast, Princess. Some say you have found an unexpected bond with this human. His gaze sharpened. That would be unfortunate. You know how much the Empire values strong alliances. Zalvanna didn't blink. Indeed, which is why I have been considering my options carefully. Malthar's smirk faltered slightly. And what conclusion have you reached? She stepped closer to Ethan, the movement so subtle yet so deliberate that the entire room noticed. She turned to him, holding his gaze for a moment before speaking. I have come to appreciate Ethan's presence more than I anticipated. Ethan fought the urge to raise an eyebrow. She was committed to the act. Malthar's expression darkened. Surely, Princess, you don't mean. Is there a problem, Malthar? Zalvanna interrupted, her voice like steel. Malthar hesitated, glancing around. Other nobles were watching closely, their curiosity piqued. If he pushed too hard, it would damage his reputation. Finally, he forced a smile. Of course not, Princess. If you have made your choice, then who am I to question it? Ethan could see the tension in Malthar's jaw. He wasn't happy, but he wouldn't challenge her in public. For now, a dangerous warning. After the gathering, Ethan and Zalvanna returned to the palace gardens, where the air was cool and quiet. That went well, Ethan said. Zalvanna exhaled. For now, Malthar will not give up so easily. Ethan leaned against a railing. You think he'll try something else? She nodded. Men like him do not accept defeat. He will find another way to gain power. Ethan frowned. Then we should stay ahead of him. Before Zalvanna could respond, a messenger approached, bowing deeply. Your Highness, a message for you. She took the data scroll and activated it. As she read, her expression hardened. What is it? Ethan asked. She handed him the scroll. The words on the screen were clear and chilling. The princess is unfit to rule. If she does not step aside, she will be removed, permanently. Ethan clenched his jaw. Looks like Malthar isn't wasting time. Zalvanna's fingers curled around the scroll. He dares to threaten me. Ethan's mind was already working. This wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. Malthar has allies. He wouldn't be bold enough to act unless he was certain he had support. Zalvanna's eyes flashed. Then we will uncover his allies and destroy his plans. Ethan nodded. And we'll do it together. For a moment, she just looked at him. Then, to his surprise, she gave a small, sharp smile. Good, because I have no intention of losing. The palace halls were quiet that night, but Ethan couldn't sleep. The warning message still lingered in his mind. Whoever was behind this wasn't just making empty threats. They were ready to act. He stood by the window of his guest chamber, watching the twin moons glow over the city. His instincts told him trouble was coming, and soon. A soft knock at his door made him turn. Enter, he called. The door opened, and Princess Zalvanna stepped inside, dressed in a dark, flowing robe. Her silver eyes gleamed in the dim light. You're still awake, she noted. Ethan smirked. So are you. She exhaled. I couldn't sleep. My mind is restless. Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. Then sit. Let's figure this out. She hesitated for a moment before walking over and sitting down. I keep thinking about Malthar, she admitted. He has supporters in the council, but how deep does his influence go? Ethan leaned forward. We need proof. If we expose his true allies, the Emperor can act against him. Zalvanna tapped her fingers against the armrest. But how do we get proof? Ethan's lips curled into a smirk. We bait him. She raised an eyebrow. Explain. He leaned closer. Right now, he still believes you're vulnerable. If we make him think you're growing weaker, he'll get impatient and make his move. Zalvanna considered it. You want to lure him into acting too soon. Ethan nodded. Exactly. And when he does, we'll be waiting for him. A slow smile spread across her lips. I like the way you think, human. The trap is set. The next day, Zalvanna made a surprising announcement, one that sent shockwaves through the palace. She declared that she was considering stepping away from succession, claiming that recent events had made her question her role as future empress. The reaction was immediate. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some nobles doubted her words, but others saw an opportunity. And among them was Lord Malphar. That night, Ethan and Salvanna watched from a hidden chamber as their trap took shape. A secret informant, one of the royal guards loyal to Salvanna, had reported that Malphar was arranging a secret meeting in the lower levels of the palace. It worked, Ethan murmured as he adjusted the small listening device in his ear. Salvanna stood beside him, her expression unreadable. Now we find out who truly stands with him. They moved silently through the dimly lit corridors, following the informant's directions. Soon, they reached an ancient passage beneath the palace, where nobles once held secret meetings in times of war. Ethan carefully peered around a corner. There they were. Malphar stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a group of nobles and military officers. Ethan activated the listening device, and their hushed conversation filled his earpiece. "The princess is wavering," Malphar was saying. "She is weak. Soon she will step aside. And when she does, the throne will need a strong leader." A noble woman scoffed. "You assume the emperor will simply allow you to take control." Malphar smirked. "The emperor grows old. His power is not what it once was. With the right push, he will see reason." Ethan clenched his jaw. "He's planning to overthrow the emperor too." Another noble spoke. "And if Salvanna refuses to step aside?" Malphar's smirk vanished. His voice turned cold. "Then we remove her. Permanently." Caught in the open, Salvanna's breath hitched. Ethan felt her tense beside him. "We have what we need," he whispered. "Let's get out of here." But as they turned to leave, a boot scuffed against the stone floor. Ethan froze. Salvanna did too. Someone was behind them. Before they could react, a voice called out, "Who Joey's there?" The entire chamber fell silent. Then, chaos erupted. Malphar's guards rushed forward, weapons drawn. Salvanna and Ethan ran. They sprinted through the corridors, footsteps pounding behind them. Ethan grabbed Salvanna's hand, pulling her around a sharp corner just as energy blasts struck the walls behind them. "Faster," Ethan urged. Salvanna wasn't used to running for her life, but she didn't slow down. She knew what was at stake. As they neared the palace entrance, more guards appeared ahead. They were trapped. Ethan cursed under his breath. They needed a plan. Fast. Salvanna scanned the area. Then she spotted something. A control panel near the corridor's edge. She grabbed Ethan's arm. "Get ready." Before he could ask why, she slammed her hand against the panel. The emergency blast doors slammed shut, sealing off the passage behind them. Malphar's men skidded to a stop, blocked by the thick security doors. Ethan grinned. "Nice move." Salvanna exhaled. "Let's not stop now." They raced up the stairway, heading straight for the Emperor's chambers. The truth revealed. Minutes later, they burst into the Emperor's private hall. Valchorus stood from his throne, alarmed by their sudden entrance. "What is the meaning of this?" Salvanna took a deep breath. "We have proof. Malphar is planning to take the throne." She pulled out the recording device and activated it. Malphar's voice echoed through the chamber. "And when she does, the throne will need a strong leader." Valchorus listened silently, his expression unreadable, but when the recording ended, his silver eyes burned with rage. "Guards," he ordered, his voice like thunder, "arrest Lord Malphar and his conspirators at once." The royal guards immediately moved out. The Emperor turned to Salvanna and Ethan. "You have done a great service to the Empire," he said. Salvanna bowed slightly. "I only did what was necessary." Valchorus looked at Ethan. "And you, human, you have proven yourself more than just an outsider. You are an ally." Ethan smiled. "Happy to help." Salvanna glanced at him. Something unspoken passed between them, a look of respect, and something more. But before either of them could speak, a guard rushed into the hall, his face pale. "My Emperor, Lord Malthar, has escaped." Silence filled the chamber. Ethan sighed. Of course he did. Zalvanna clenched her fists. "Then we hunt him down." Ethan smirked. "Now you're speaking my language." The air in the palace was thick with tension. News of Lord Malthar's escape had spread quickly, and the royal guards were on high alert. Every corridor, every exit, and every transport hub was being monitored. But Ethan knew Malthar was too smart to be caught that easily. He stood beside Princess Zalvanna in the palace war room, studying a holographic map of the capital city. "He won't try to leave the planet," Ethan said, tracing his finger along the glowing lines. "Not yet. He needs resources, allies, a place to regroup." Zalvanna's eyes narrowed. "There are only a few locations where he could hide." A guard stepped forward. "Your Highness, our scouts have picked up a transport signal near the abandoned military outpost in the Eastern District." Ethan smirked. "That's our guy." Zalvanna nodded. "We leave at once." The Emperor, Valkoris, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "Be careful, my daughter." Zalvanna placed a fist over her chest in a respectful salute. "I will not fail." Ethan cracked his knuckles. "Let's go finish this." The hunt begins. The royal strike team moved swiftly through the empty streets of the Eastern District, their armored boots barely making a sound. The old military outpost stood against the skyline like a forgotten monument, its towers cracked, its walls covered in vines. Ethan checked his weapon. "If I were a power-hungry noble with an army on my tail, this is exactly where I'd hide." Zalvanna motioned to her soldiers. "Surround the perimeter. No one gets in or out." Ethan and Zalvanna entered through a side passage, moving cautiously. The air smelled of rust and decay. Then, a voice echoed through the halls. "I was wondering when you'd find me." Malthar stepped out of the shadows, flanked by two mercenaries. His golden eyes glowed in the dim light. Zalvanna's expression remained cold. "Surrender, Malthar. Your betrayal has been exposed. You have nowhere left to run." Malthar chuckled. "You underestimate me, Princess. I have more power than you realize." Ethan rolled his shoulders. "Yeah, then why are you hiding in a rotting outpost instead of sitting on the throne?" Malthar's smirk disappeared. "I will have the throne. And you, human, you should have never interfered." He nodded to his mercenaries. "Kill them." The battle. Ethan reacted instantly. He ducked as a plasma shot whizzed past his head. Zalvanna moved like lightning, her energy blade igniting with a sharp hum. The fight exploded in a flurry of motion, blades clashing, gunfire echoing through the halls. Ethan took cover behind a fallen pillar and fired at one of the mercenaries, hitting him square in the chest. The second one lunged at Zalvanna, but she twisted gracefully, slicing through his weapon and delivering a swift kick to his chest. Malthar growled in frustration. "Useless fools." Ethan turned to him. "Looks like it's just you now." Malthar snarled. "You think I fear you?" Zalvanna raised her blade. "You should." Malthar suddenly pulled a small device from his robes. The moment Ethan saw it, his stomach dropped. "A detonator." "I will not be taken alive," Malthar declared. "If I cannot rule, then I will see this empire burn." He pressed the button. Nothing happened. Zalvanna smirked. "Did you really think I wouldn't disable your explosives before coming here?" Malthar's eyes widened in shock. Ethan stepped forward. Game over. The sound of boots stomping filled the air as royal guards stormed into the room, weapons raised. Malthar clenched his fists, breathing heavily. He looked around, realizing his last chance had slipped away. Finally, he dropped the detonator and fell to his knees. Zalvanna stared down at him. "You have betrayed the Empire. You will answer for your crimes." Malthar's voice was bitter. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, princess. The game is never truly over. Zalvanna turned away, her voice firm. Take him away. The guards restrained him, leading him out of the outpost. Ethan let out a long breath. Well, that was intense. Zalvanna sheathed her blade. It's over. Ethan grinned. Not bad for a day's work. She looked at him, her expression softer now. You have been a true ally, Ethan. More than that. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh, are you saying you'd miss me if I left? She smirked. Perhaps. A new beginning. Back at the palace, Emperor Valkorus personally thanked Ethan for his bravery. You have proven yourself, he said. You are no mere outsider. You are a friend to our people. Zalvanna stepped forward. Father, I would like to request that Ethan remain as an advisor to the royal court. Ethan blinked. Wait, me, a royal advisor? The emperor chuckled. Would you refuse such an honor? Ethan thought for a moment, then grinned. Well, I suppose I've gotten used to saving princesses. Zalvanna rolled her eyes but smiled. The emperor nodded. Then it is settled. As the court cheered, Zalvanna turned to Ethan. Welcome to the Empire, human. Ethan smirked. Glad to be here. And so, as one chapter ended, another began. For Ethan, for Zalvanna, and for the future of the Empire.